Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Bigham with you on this Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, the top leaders of China and Vietnam have met in Beijing to strengthen trade, development, cooperation, covering a wide range of bilateral and international issues. Israel and Lebanon have laid out their different expectations for reaching a ceasefire during talks in Washington. And travel permits for Taiwan residents heading to the mainland have increased sharply in the first quarter. In business, the latest Canton Fair is underway in southern China with more than 32,000 participating enterprises. In sports, Atletico Madrid is back in the Champions League semifinals for the first time in 9 years. In culture and entertainment, restored Han Dynasty records are on display in Nanchang. Now checking the day's top stories. General Secretary Xi Jinping of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee, also the Chinese president, says his country regards Vietnam as a priority in its neighborhood diplomacy and is willing to jointly promote cooperation and high quality. In a meeting with his Vietnamese counterpart in Beijing, Xi Jinping said the Communist Party of China and the Communist Party of Vietnam should maintain high strategic clarity and strong strategic resolve, as well as confidence in the path and the system. He urged efforts to intensify high-level exchanges and consolidate political mutual trust. The Chinese leader said the two countries should walk alongside each other on the push to modernization. He said China and Vietnam should accelerate the alignment of development strategies and prioritize infrastructure connectivity and strengthen cooperation in emerging fields such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and the Internet of Things. Xi Jinping called on both countries to oppose unilateralism and protectionism, safeguard the global free trade system, and keep industrial and supply chains stable and unimpeded. He said as this year marks the 5th anniversary of the China-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, China is willing to work with countries in the region to build a closer China-ASEAN community with a shared future. General Secretary To Lam of the Communist Party of Vietnam's Central Committee, also the country's president, said Vietnam is willing to step up strategic coordination and strengthen cooperation in education, technology, and people-to-people exchanges. Following the talks, the leaders attended a ceremony for the signing of cooperation documents covering fields including public security, technology, and media. The top leaders of China and Vietnam also met with participants on the Red Study Tours, an initiative promoting the historical legacy of Vietnamese China friendship through visits to major revolutionary history education sites. General Secretary Xi Jinping said young people are a vital force driving social development and progress, and successors who carry forward the cause of the communist parties of China and Vietnam. He expressed hope that the young people will stand together in mutual support, shoulder responsibilities, and adopt a global vision. General Secretary To Lam said he hopes young people from both countries will play an important role in their country's development and in China-Vietnam friendship. To better understand China-Vietnam ties and the signals from To Lam's state visit, we spoke with Associate Professor Wang Xinsong at the School of Government, Beijing Normal University.
To Lam's visit to China after his re-election really signifies that China is still the top priority to Vietnam's strategy and diplomacy, and China and Vietnam share very similar political systems. And economically, China has been the largest trading partner of Vietnam. In 2025, the bilateral trade reached over $200 billion, and China is one of the largest foreign investors in Vietnam. And also the visit comes at a very critical juncture in terms of global relations, where obviously we have a very serious conflict going on in the Gulf, which disrupts not only the energy supply, but also the global economy. So the visit by To Lam to China, being his first overseas visit after his re-election, really signifies that in this part of the world, China and Vietnam are critical powers upholding peace, stability, and dialogues.
That was Professor Wang Xinsong on efforts of bringing China and Vietnam closer. A data analysis platform iChicha says over 200 Chinese companies invested in Vietnam last year, focusing on electronics, new energy, auto parts, and textiles and garments. A Guangzhou-based Cage Batteries has been investing in Vietnam for 10 years. We spoke with Deputy General Manager Ray Chen about their business operation and takeaway from the Vietnamese leader's visit to China.
Vietnam is also called the Kingdom of Motorcycle. Over 95 million motorcycles for 100 million population. A lot of people use the motorcycle as the transport tool in Vietnam. So we just do motorcycle battery. I think that is a very, very stable market. That is a very positive signal for the manufacturer like us, because I think that the Vietnam and China relation is very stable. Just like the trading, we will set up a free trading zone for help us to expand the market. Vietnam also have a plan carbon neutral by 2050. Like a lot of motorcycle will change to the e-motorcycle. So I think that this is a good business and potential business in Vietnam.
The business executive said his company has plans to set up a lithium battery production facility and R&D center to serve the local market. China and Vietnam are continuing to strengthen economic ties, with bilateral trade maintaining steady growth. At the Hukou-Lao Tsai border port, the flow of goods is accelerating, driven by improved connectivity and more efficient customs procedures. Yang Jinghao reports.
Durian is winning over more Chinese consumers. Widely grown across Southeast Asia, it is now exported to China in growing volumes, with Vietnam as a key supplier.
Actually, I'm not a fan of durian, but this really tastes special.
The Hukou port on the China-Vietnam border in southwest China's Yunnan province is a key gateway for Vietnamese agricultural products entering China. Local traders say business is booming, especially for durian.
On a normal busy day, we handle about 30 containers. At peak times, it can exceed 70. Last year, our trade totaled around 300 million yuan.
Durian is just one illustration of the expanding trade between China and Vietnam. Official data shows bilateral trade reached a record $290 billion in 2025, with China remaining Vietnam's largest trading partner for multiple consecutive years. Chinese exports to Vietnam are also broadening, spanning electronics, machinery, and everyday consumer goods. A Yunnan-based Phalaenopsis cultivation company provides a clear example of this growing trend.
Our very first order with Vietnam was for about a few thousand units. And this past year, we've shipped about 200,000 units to Vietnam.
Behind the continued growth in bilateral trade is the development of smart ports. Border officers now use technologies such as under-vehicle inspection robot and intelligent life detection devices to support their work.
Previously, it took about 10 minutes for each driver to complete inspection and exit procedures. Now, the process can be shortened to just 2 to 3 minutes.
At customs clearance points, 5G handheld devices and other digital tools are also helping improve efficiency, along with more facilitation measures.
We have set up green channels and dedicated service windows and implemented a 24/7 appointment-based clearance system. This allows enterprises to declare at any time and ensure customs can process applications immediately.
Experts say the real breakthrough now would depend on how well the two sides align industrial systems and regulatory standards, turning connectivity into fully integrated long-term growth.
Going forward, the two countries need closer coordination to accelerate progress in areas such as product standards, technical regulations, rules of origin certification, and simplified approval procedures. We should also expand the use of local currencies in settlement and improve cross-border financial services.
Today, as China and Vietnam advance plans and agreements to modernize and expand rail connectivity, the two neighbors are looking to unlock faster, smoother trade and deeper economic ties.
That was Yang Jinghao reporting from the China-Vietnam border. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on China and Russia to strengthen strategic communication and diplomatic coordination to elevate their partnership to a higher level. In a meeting with visiting Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, President Xi said the two sides should safeguard their legitimate interests and uphold unity among global South nations.
今年是中俄战略协作伙伴关系建立30周年。
This year marks the 30th anniversary of China-Russia Strategic Partnership of Coordination and the 25th anniversary of the signing of the China-Russia Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation. Under the strategic guidance of me and President Putin, the two countries' comprehensive strategic partnership has maintained high-level development and yielded fruitful outcomes in various fields. Facing a volatile and intertwined international landscape, the stability and certainty of China-Russia relations are particularly valuable. The strong vitality and exemplary significance of the China-Russia Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation have become more prominent.
The Chinese president said the two countries should maintain mutual trust and common development. He also said the two sides should fully leverage geographic proximity and complementary advantages, deepen all-round cooperation, and improve development resilience. President Xi called for stronger multilateral cooperation within the United Nations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS to promote a fair international order. Lavrov conveyed President Vladimir Putin's greetings, noting the severe and complex international situation. Lavrov said Russia stands ready to work with China to implement the important consensus reached by the two heads of state and enhance cooperation.
Mr. President, this meeting demonstrates your commitment to the Russia-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership of Coordination in a new era. Russia and China have good momentum in cooperation in sectors such as trade, the economy, investment, humanitarian affairs, and culture. You and President Putin have charted the blueprint for our future cooperation.
Lavrov also stressed the need to uphold international fairness and justice, strive for further development of Russia-China relations, and make greater contributions to world peace and stability. Coming up, Israel and Lebanon have laid out their expectations for reaching a ceasefire.
You've been listening to programs from CGTN Radio.
CGTN Radio.
We invite you to visit us online for more audio, pictures, and in-depth reports. At radio.cgtn.com, you can access a wide range of programs and find your favorite news, talk, features, entertainment shows, and podcasts. Hear the difference with CGTN Radio.
13 past the hour. Israel is seeking Hezbollah's disarmament as Lebanon calls for a ceasefire and measures to ease the humanitarian crisis in the country. The two sides have laid out different expectations during talks in the United States. They agreed to launch direct negotiations after the meeting among their ambassadors to the U.S., along with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other senior officials. It marked the first major high-level engagement between the governments of Israel and Lebanon since 1993. And Tony Waterman has details.
The U.S., Lebanon, and Israel released a joint statement in which they called the talks productive and said that both sides expressed their support for further talks. And in this statement, Israel said that it would be willing to work with the Lebanese government to disarm all non-state terror groups and dismantle all terror infrastructure. It didn't explicitly name Hezbollah in Lebanon, with which Israel is currently engaged in this war. The Israeli ambassador actually spoke to reporters after the talks and said that Lebanon no longer wanted to be occupied, in his words, by Hezbollah.
We are both united in liberating Lebanon from an occupation power dominated by Iran called Hezbollah. This was a victory for sanity, for responsibility, and for peace.
The Lebanese ambassador has issued her own statement reiterating calls for a ceasefire and also the return of displaced persons to their homes. Israel has set up this buffer zone in southern Lebanon to help protect its northern border. In terms of that immediate ceasefire demand, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it explicitly clear that that is not an option on the negotiating table and has said that Israel will continue to strike until Hezbollah disarms. And in fact, Israel continued its bombardment in southern Lebanon as the talks were taking place. Hezbollah has refused to disarm, and it says that it's going to reject anything that comes out of these talks. But it seems as if the two sides could be heading to another round of negotiations, because in this statement, they said that all sides agreed to launch direct negotiations at a mutually agreed time and venue. For the U.S.'s part, in a statement, it expressed support for further talks, but said that any agreement to cease hostilities must be reached between the two governments, brokered by the United States and not through any separate track. So perhaps a signal there to Iran that Lebanon is not part of this ongoing U.S.-Iran ceasefire, even though what happens in Lebanon could still have an impact on that ceasefire. Meanwhile, the UN Development Program has issued a new report saying that as this conflict unfolds, as many as 32.5 million people could fall into poverty globally, hit by a triple shock, as they call it, of energy affordability and availability, food price increases, and growth downturns.
That was Tony Waterman on the high-level talks between Israel and Lebanon. U.S. President Donald Trump says the war against Iran is very close to completion, and he isn't thinking about extending the ceasefire. He also said another round of talks with Iran could happen in Pakistan soon. Washington and Tehran concluded weekend negotiations without a deal, followed by the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports. Now, media say war reparations are a main issue for Iran in these talks, with losses estimated at around $270 billion U.S. dollars in 6 weeks of U.S. and Israeli attacks. Asan Kevani reports.
We're now hearing unconfirmed reports about the possibility of a second round of talks. Apparently, Pakistani's Army Chief General Asim Munir is working hard to find common ground between the U.S. and Iran on the big sticking points, uranium and nuclear enrichment. In his latest comments, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian made it clear threats and pressure are not a solution. They only make things more complicated. He said Iran prefers diplomacy, and while protecting its national dignity, it's ready for talks. According to Pezeshkian, Iran sees the security of the Strait of Hormuz as critical. Any threat to it will hit global economy, but at the same time, he insists that Iran is ready for any scenario. The president also added that even though technical understandings were reached during the Islamabad talks, what he calls greed and lack of political will from senior U.S. officials prevented a final deal. Meanwhile, down in the Persian Gulf, there are reports that 4 Iran-linked vessels have passed through the Strait of Hormuz. These are critical days. On one side, there is the real risk of confrontation between Iran and U.S. naval forces over the blockade. On the other hand, there is an enormous amount of political effort from Pakistan and other countries trying to push both Tehran and Washington back into the negotiating table.
That was Asan Kevani reporting. The U.S. military says its forces have completely halted economic trade going into and out of Iran by sea, less than 36 hours since the start of the blockade. The U.S. Central Command said more than 10,000 troops, along with warships and aircraft, are executing the mission to stop ships entering and departing Iranian ports. U.S. President Donald Trump also threatened to eliminate any Iranian vessel if it comes close to the lockdown in the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has addressed a Turning Point USA event in Georgia, discussing his leadership of the U.S. delegation in over 20 hours of negotiations with Iran. He said President Donald Trump seeks a grand bargain and not a small deal.
Right now, the ceasefire is holding. And what you're seeing is what the president wants to make, he doesn't want to make like a small deal. He wants to make the grand bargain. And what he's basically offering to Iran is very simple, and frankly, it's something that no president has had the ability to offer. He said that if you're willing to act like a normal country, we are willing to treat you economically like a normal country. He doesn't want a small deal.
Vance said Trump wants Iran to commit to no nuclear weapons in exchange for economic prosperity and integration into the world economy. Vance acknowledged many young voters dislike U.S. Middle East policy, but urged conservatives not to become disengaged. The International Monetary Fund has downgraded its projection for global economic growth to 3.1% this year, as the war on Iran casts a shadow over the economic outlook. In the IMF's worst-case scenario, the world economy faces possible recession if inflation spikes and remains high for the rest of the year and into 2027. Walter Morris has details from the IMF World Bank spring meetings in Washington.
The chief economist for the IMF says global economic growth had been on a steady positive trajectory for years, but the war in Iran stopped that momentum. And the IMF says if the conflict continues and energy prices continue to climb, the global economy could face a recession. The IMF published the World Economic Outlook Tuesday on the second day of the annual spring meetings in Washington, D.C. IMF officials say they now project global economic growth of 3.1% this year, down from projections in January of 3.3%, with inflation climbing to 4.4%. Economists point to the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and damage to refineries in the region as major factors driving up global energy prices. The 2026 forecast includes 3 scenarios. According to the IMF, in a moderate scenario and the war ends soon, energy prices will rise 19% this year. In a more adverse scenario, with further disruptions leading to higher energy prices and inflation, global economic growth would fall to 2.5%. In the most severe scenario, energy supply disruptions continue into next year, central banks would be forced to raise interest rates to control inflation, and global growth could drop to 2% in 2026 and 2027. According to the report, countries in the Middle East, low-income commodity importing countries, and emerging markets would be hit the hardest.
The world economy faces another difficult test. Fraying alliances, new conflicts, and waves of inward-looking policies such as trade restrictions undermine cooperation and growth. Growing strains on international order are pushing toward a multipolar world. But a more multipolar world need not be a more fragmented one. Now, the war demands immediate attention, yet it should not derail from the pursuit of durable growth. It should also spur faster adoption of renewable energy, which can strengthen resilience to energy shocks, improve energy security, and support the climate transition. Advances in artificial intelligence promise large productivity gains, lifting living standards. But the transition may be bumpy. Markets may well be ahead of fundamentals. New jobs will emerge, but some existing ones will also disappear.
And the IMF releases the World Economic Outlook twice a year in October and April, and economists will release updated projections in July.
That was Walter Morris reporting. Coming up, travel permits for Taiwan residents heading to the mainland have risen sharply.
Discover the realities and responses to our changing climate with Climate Watch. Uncover critical issues such as the Masai Mara's disrupted wildebeest migration and the drop in the Panama Canal's water levels. Delve into solutions for a sustainable future. Tune in to Climate Watch on your favorite podcast platform. Become more eco-conscious and take action to protect our planet.
We're at 24 minutes past the hour. The National Immigration Administration says applications from Taiwan for mainland travel permits increased 11.8% in the first quarter. The number of arrivals from the island grew nearly 30% during the first 3 months. This is despite the Democratic Progressive Party authorities' obstructions to cross-strait exchanges. A spokesperson for the State Council Taiwan Affairs Office said facts have proven that the desire for peace, development, and exchanges and cooperation is the mainstream public opinion in Taiwan. The mainland official said the DPP authority disregarded public opinion and acted against that trend. The Chinese mainland says the recent engagement between the Communist Party of China and the Chinese Kuomintang is playing a significant role in promoting the peaceful development of cross-strait relations. Huang Yue has more.
The recent trip by the Chinese Kuomintang Party chairperson Chen Liwen marked the first time in a decade that a KMT leader had visited the mainland. Chen Binghua, a spokesperson for the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council, said the latest meeting between the CPC and the KMT has had significant impact across the strait and in the international community. It said it helps ensure that the future of cross-strait relations remains firmly in the hands of the Chinese people. The spokesperson also emphasized that no matter how the international or cross-strait situations evolve, the overarching trend of closer ties and people-to-people exchanges between the two sides will not change. The Chinese mainland has also introduced 10 new measures to boost cross-strait cooperation. The spokesperson said these measures reflect the desire among people on both sides for peace and development, and pledged that the mainland would work to implement them in a concrete and effective manner. The spokesperson also criticized the DPP authorities for smearing these measures.
Every time the mainland introduces measures that benefit our Taiwan compatriots, the DPP authorities try to smear them. Whenever something helps improve the well-being and interests of Taiwan compatriots, they go all out to oppose it. This pattern has been ridiculed by Taiwan media as a knee-jerk reaction, and has drawn widespread criticism and opposition from all sectors of society in Taiwan. We advise the DPP authorities to listen more to the will of the people in Taiwan and to do more to promote cross-strait exchanges and cooperation, rather than standing in the way of the people and blocking their benefits.
That was a report about the Chinese mainland's call for the removal of obstacles to cross-strait ties. The Spanish government's finalized a migrant amnesty measure, allowing potentially hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants to apply for legal status. Migration Minister Elma Saez says it's a fair measure to grant legal rights and obligations to undocumented residents who already live, work, and integrate into Spanish society.
Se trata de la aprobación definitiva.
This is about the final approval of the royal decree that will initiate an extraordinary regulation process for thousands of migrants who already reside in our country. These are people who live among us, with children who go to school with our children, who bring life to our towns and streets, and who, from today, will be able to enjoy full rights and fulfill their obligations with guarantees.
Tuesday's move contrasts with stricter immigration policies across much of Europe and the United States. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez called it an act of justice and a necessity. He emphasized that those living and working in Spain should do so under equal conditions and pay taxes. Eligible immigrants can apply for a one-year residency and work permit at various government offices. Applicants must have arrived before January 1st of this year and meet specific residency and legal criteria. Top officials have called for urgent action to empower young people as the United Nations opened its 2026 Youth Forum. President Lok Bahadur Thapa of the Economic and Social Council said all young people must have a voice and a chance to participate.
If we are truly committed to leaving no one behind, we must ensure that all young people, regardless of geography, gender, ability, or socio-economic background, have equitable access to opportunity, voice, and influence.
The forum's a global platform, letting young people share ideas with UN member states. It aims to speed up progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. For over 10 years, this has been the UN's largest yearly gathering of young people. We're at 29 past the hour. Beijing overcast overnight. It's down to 14 degrees. A light rainfall expected and 19 on Thursday. Shanghai will be overcast and 15, then a light rainfall and 20. Chongqing's overcast overnight and tomorrow, a low of 18, a high of 28. And Nanchang will see thunder showers through tomorrow, a low of 18, a high of 21. Last is getting overcast conditions tonight. It's down to +2, then cloudy and 18. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad will be overcast and 18 this evening, a light rainfall with the high of 32 on Thursday. Vientiane's down to 24, then sunny and 39. Phnom Penh's getting a light rainfall tonight and tomorrow, a low of 26 and a high of 38 degrees. In Africa, Nairobi will see a light rainfall and 25 degrees Celsius on Thursday. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, the top leaders of China and Vietnam have met in Beijing to strengthen trade, development, and cooperation, covering a wide range of bilateral and international issues. Israel and Lebanon have laid out their different expectations for reaching a ceasefire during talks in Washington. And travel permits for Taiwan residents heading to the mainland have increased sharply in the first quarter. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Shh, listen up. Can you hear the heartbeat of our world? It's vibrant and pulsating with the essence of life itself. From the stem of trees to the gurgle of rivers. From the silent strength of mountains to the icy whispers of glaciers. Even the solid ground beneath our feet. And right there, in the midst of all, beats the heart of humanity. What if those other heartbeats were to stop? Would ours keep on ticking?
Ever wondered what's actually going on in Africa through the perspective of an African? How are things really going between China and Africa? What's the narrative of this relationship? Well, get a perspective with China-Africa Talk. Hear from African diplomats, entrepreneurs, academics, Chinese natives, and more. Get on our wavelength every week to find out what's real with China-Africa Talk. Find us on your favorite podcast. We'll see you there.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Bigham with you on this Wednesday. Still to come. In business, the latest Canton Fair is underway in southern China with more than 32,000 participating enterprises. In sports, Atletico Madrid's back in the Champions League semifinals for the first time in 9 years. In culture and entertainment, restored Han Dynasty records are on display in Nanchang. And to contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @CGTN Radio. Now checking the day's headlines, here's Tianyu.
Thank you, Shane. China and Vietnam have pledged to deepen their ties during high-level talks in Beijing. General Secretary Xi Jinping of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, also the Chinese president, held talks with Vietnam's top leader on Wednesday. President Xi congratulated To Lam on his election as the Vietnamese president and said China will continue to prioritize relations with its southern neighbor. The Chinese leader also urged faster progress on infrastructure connectivity and emerging industries such as artificial intelligence and semiconductors, while welcoming more Vietnamese products into the Chinese market. To Lam said his visit reflects Hanoi's strong commitment to ties with Beijing, adding that relations have maintained positive momentum. Both sides also reaffirmed support for multilateralism and pledged to jointly address global challenges. Following the talks, the two countries signed a series of cooperation agreements covering areas including law enforcement, trade, and media. President Xi has stressed the importance of stable China-Russia ties amid global turbulence as he met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Beijing.
今年是中俄战略协作伙伴关系建立30周年。
This year marks the 30th anniversary of China-Russia Strategic Partnership of Coordination and the 25th anniversary of the signing of the China-Russia Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation. Under the strategic guidance of me and President Putin, the two countries' comprehensive strategic partnership has maintained high-level development and yielded fruitful outcomes in various fields. Facing a volatile and intertwined international landscape, the stability and certainty of China-Russia relations are particularly valuable. The strong vitality and exemplary significance of the China-Russia Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation have become more prominent.
President Xi called on both sides to advance ties and embrace longer-term developments. Lavrov said Moscow stands ready to work with Beijing to implement the consensus reached by the two heads of state, strengthen cooperation, and promote people-to-people and cultural exchanges. He also stressed the need to uphold international fairness and justice and make greater contributions to world peace and stability. After his arrival in Beijing, Lavrov held talks with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and discussed preparations for a meeting between the two heads of state within the year. The two sides also exchanged views on international and regional issues of common concern. Wang urged strategic coordination between the two countries, called for practicing multilateralism and international morality, and jointly advancing multipolarization. Lavrov noted that some countries are attempting to form small circles to contain Russia and China, and called for closer alignment on major initiatives as well as stronger coordination and cooperation. The ministers jointly signed the 2026 consultation plan of their foreign ministers. China has expressed concern over Japan's plan to deploy air defense missile units in Yonaguni in Okinawa Prefecture near China. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun said under the pretext of defense and counterattack, Japan is strengthening offensive weaponry, including missiles, in areas adjacent to China. Guo warned that this effectively builds a frontline stronghold for military confrontation and threatens regional peace and stability. He urged Japan to deeply reflect on its history of militarist aggression and act prudently in military security. Guo also called on the international community to remain highly vigilant and curb Japan's accelerating trend toward remilitarization and a new type of militarism. And finally, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has suspended the federal fuels excise tax in response to the Iran war. The announcement on Tuesday is his first act after securing a majority government. Carney calls it a responsible temporary measure to reduce costs for truckers and businesses. His Liberals now hold 174 of the 343 seats in the House of Commons, allowing the government to pass legislation without opposition support. Carney's government is the first in Canada's history to switch from a minority to a majority between elections.
Thank you very much. That's Tianyu with headlines. Coming up in business, the latest Canton Fair is underway in southern China with more than 32,000 participating enterprises.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
37 past the hour now. And with business, here's Wang Zihang.
Thank you, Shane. Stock markets on the Chinese mainland closed mixed on Wednesday. The Shanghai Composite was up slightly. The Shenzhen component lost nearly 1%. Pharmaceutical and logistics shares were among the top gainers. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index gained almost 0.3%. Japan's Nikkei increased over 0.4%. China's largest and longest-running trade event, the China Import and Export Fair, is underway in Guangzhou. The biannual event, also known as the Canton Fair, will run in 3 phases until May the 5th. With a strong focus on intelligent products, the fair will feature over 75,000 booths across 179 exhibition areas. More than 32,000 enterprises are participating, including 3,900 first-timers. To facilitate trade, the Canton Fair has introduced 210 service trade institutions and will hold over 600 new product debut events. Liao Zhihao is the deputy head of Canton Fair Work Division.
At this edition of the Canton Fair, we are further improving our services. In addition to logistics, quality inspection, finance, and consulting, we are adding RD design, digitalization, and trade and investment.
There's been a 20% yearly increase in the number of new buyers, with the number of leading purchasing enterprises increasing 30%. Organizers have upgraded services for exhibitors to keep pace with the latest market trends. Huang Fei has more.
What stands out to me is really the sheer size of the event. I've been coming here for many years, but this year the scale is bigger than ever. 32,000 plus exhibitors, 75,000 booths. These are record turnouts. And at the same time, among these participants, nearly 4,000 companies are participating for the very first time. A growing number of them are in the niche and advanced sectors. Innovation is once again front and center. There are 9 new exhibitions zones covering everything from smart wearables to consumer drones to even modular housing. And 60% of participating companies are using technologies like AI and 5G and the Internet of Things. These really showcases China's move up the value chain. And more than 4.6 million products are on display this spring session, and with many products are new, green, and independently and domestically developed products. Now, on the demand side, a global interest remains very, very strong. Major global retailers like Walmart, Tesco, and Carrefour are all here. And of course, even before the opening of the Canton Fair, over 210,000 overseas buyers are pre-registered. Many of them are interested in especially electronics products. And, many of these pre-registered buyers are from emerging markets, including Latin America and Africa. And notably, buyers from the Middle East are showing very strong interest, despite, as you know, conflicts in the region, and dedicated services here at the Canton Fair, including online business matchmaking and promotional live streaming, are really keeping these buyers engaged. And at the same time, we're seeing another trend, on how Chinese exporters are evolving. Many of them are not just selling products, they're selling integrated solutions, combining hardware, software, and services, and really solving real practical challenges across many industries. And at the same time, we're seeing many Chinese exporters going global. There are at least 20% of participating companies have invested overseas, creating collectively more than 200,000 local jobs in various countries. So despite global uncertainties, we're seeing, international buyers still coming here to the Canton Fair. Deals are still being made, in the conversations we've been having all morning with buyers. We hear that, they think Chinese manufacturers are really leading the world in terms of pricing, in technology, in product quality, everything including efficiency. And so, as you know, the Canton Fair has always been known as the barometer of China's export trade. And once again, this event is showcasing resilience in the Chinese supply chain and sustained confidence in Chinese manufacturing.
That was Huang Fei at the ongoing Canton Fair in southern China. Now, the China International Consumer Products Expo includes over 340 international medical brands at a sub-venue in Boao Lecheng International Medical Pilot Zone. It is the country's only special medical zone and is accelerating healthcare openness. One year after a plan was unveiled in Boao, spending has risen noticeably. For more insights, Vivian Nunes spoke with Zhao Dahai, professor at Shanghai Jiaotong University.
Given that wide range of applications then, what is the outlook for China's health consumption market in drawing more domestic and international clients interested in obtaining health services here in China?
First of all, the outlook, I think, is very positive. For domestic clients, China is expanding middle class and aging population want more than basic care. They want convenience, comfort, and dignity. That market is massive. For international clients, China offers three advantages. First, value for money. With lower prices than the US or European countries. The second, efficiency with much shorter wait times and specialized expertise, such as certain cancer surgeries. Hainan of visa-free access and international accreditation also here. Tangents may remain, but the direction is very clear. China is becoming a destination for quality health services, especially in specialty care and wellness recovery. The Boao pilot zone allows access to internationally approved drugs and devices, not yet in mainland China. Real-world data can even be used for registration. Hainan's climate is ideal for rehab, while tax incentives and visa-free entry for more than 80 countries make it easy to bring in international patients. Third, convenience of tourist traffic, more than 100 million visitors a year in Hainan, many seeking wellness. Converting that flow into health consumption is a powerful model.
That was Professor Zhao Dahai on China's healthcare market. The Chinese Finance Ministry says it will issue this year's second batch of renminbi-denominated treasury bonds in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region on April the 22nd. The scale of the bonds will be 15.5 billion yuan, or around $2.3 billion. On February the 11th, the ministry released the first tranche of RMB government bonds in Hong Kong through public bidding among institutional investors. The issuance totaled 14 billion yuan and was well received by investors, achieving a subscription ratio of over 3.9 times. Amazon's first global warehousing and distribution center has officially opened to sellers in Shenzhen. The Smart Hub is a one-stop bulk warehousing and distribution service established in the origin region, covering storage, cross-border transportation, and inventory repositioning. Currently, the Shenzhen Hub supports shipments to Amazon fulfillment centers in the US. The company plans to gradually expand to sites in Europe and Japan and establish additional hubs in the Yangtze River Delta region. The Australian Treasurer says the global economy is in a dangerous time as the International Monetary Fund lowered its global economic growth forecasts for this year to 3.1%. Jim Chalmers says the IMF is expecting slower growth and higher inflation, and they are holding the same expectation. He added that Australians didn't choose the circumstances of the war, but they are paying a very hefty price for it. The IMF also says Australia's economy is expected to grow 2% this year, down from the 2.1% it projected in January. It also projected the inflation in the country would rise from 2.9% in 2025 to 4% this year, warning that any government support measures to address the cost of living could add to inflation.
All right, thank you very much. That's Wang Ziheng with Business. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, Atletico Madrid's back in the Champions League semifinals for the first time in 9 years.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
47 past now, turning to sports. Here's Yang Guang.
Thank you, Shane. We begin with football. Atletico Madrid is into the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League with a 3-2 aggregate win over Barcelona. Diego Simeone's men went down 2-1 at home on the night, but that was still enough after a 2-0 victory in the reverse fixture last week, and his side is into the last four for the first time since 2017. Lamine Yamal and Ferran Torres scored early for the visitors in the first half, but at the 31st minute, Ademola Lookman was on target to restore the hosts' aggregate lead. Barca dominated possession in the second half, and Torres found the back of the net again, but it was ruled offside. Barca finished with 10 men after a last-man challenge brought a red card for defender Eric Garcia. Atletico held on to secure a place in the last four against either Arsenal or Sporting, with the Londoners leading 1-0. Atletico goalkeeper Juan Musso hit back at remarks by Rafinha, who said that the round was stolen from them.
Stolen? Stolen how? It makes it sound as if there are 3 penalties that were not given to them, or 4 red cards. You can't talk about robbery. I understand what Rafinha says. I understand what anyone can say. I respect everyone's opinion. But no. Let's not say that the round was stolen, because it wasn't. We won it on the field. We won 2-0 away. Last man in football is a red card. It's a team we respect a lot, and we're very motivated to play against. It's a great team. But I think talking about robbery is crazy.
In the other quarter-final second leg, Ousmane Dembele struck twice at Anfield as Paris Saint-Germain beat Liverpool 2-0 to win the tie 4-0 on aggregate. The defending champions are into their 5th semi-final in 7 seasons. Still in the Champions League, Real Madrid is visiting Bayern Munich, needing to overcome a 2-1 deficit. Real Madrid's coach Alvaro Arbeloa insists his team remain confident.
First and foremost, because we are Real Madrid. We come to this Allianz Arena believing we can win. We are a team that never gives up. We are the team with 15 European Cups. We are a team with some absolutely brilliant players, many of whom were not 100% fit for the first leg, but will be tomorrow. And well, no one can say for certain what tomorrow's result will be, but what I can assure you is that we are Real Madrid and we want to win.
Madrid's season has narrowed significantly. They are out of the Copa del Rey and sit second in La Liga, 9 points behind Barcelona, leaving the Champions League as their only realistic path to silverware. Midfielder Jude Bellingham emphasized urgency, saying the team must treat the match as all or nothing, stressing focus and mentality with everything riding on the game. In Major League Soccer, Javier Mascherano has stepped aside as manager of Inter Miami for personal reasons. The announcement came less than 5 months after Mascherano led Florida side to its first MLS Cup title with a 3-1 win over the Vancouver Whitecaps in the final. Guillermo Hoyos will take over on an interim basis until a permanent replacement is named. Hoyos called the role a major opportunity and praised the winning mentality within the squad.
It's a winning team, a team that is always driven to win, led by the best players in history. That makes it special. At Inter, the expectation is to go out and win on every pitch. It's more a way of living than just playing.
Mascherano oversaw 38 wins, 15 draws and 14 losses after taking charge of Inter Miami in January 2025. In addition to the MLS Cup triumph, the 41-year-old led the club to the knockout rounds of the FIFA Club World Cup last year. In basketball from the NBA play-in tournament, LaMelo Ball's winning shot helped the Charlotte Hornets beat the Miami Heat 127-126 in overtime at home to move a step closer to the playoffs. Miami lost Bam Adebayo to injury early in the second quarter when Ball grabbed Adebayo's left leg, causing the big man to fall on his back. The 28-year-old walked to the locker room under his own power but did not return. Miami Heat head coach Eric Spoelstra called it a dangerous play.
I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's funny. I think it's a stupid play. It's a dangerous play. Obviously, our best player is out. I'm not making an excuse. The Hornets played great, and they made those plays down the stretch. We had our opportunities to win. That's a shame. He should be penalized for that. I don't think that belongs in the game. Tripping guys, shenanigans and.
Ball scored 30 points and Miles Bridges added 28 for 9th place to Charlotte. The Hornets will play either Orlando or Philadelphia for the last playoff spot in the East.
All right, thank you very much. That's Yang Guang with sports. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, and coming up in culture and entertainment, restored Han Dynasty records are on display in Nanchang.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
52 past the hour. In culture and entertainment, over 100 newly restored original ancient bamboo slips have made their public debut at a museum in Nanchang, Jiangxi Province. The relics are from the tomb of a marquis from the Han Dynasty and discovered back in 2011. The tomb is one of the largest and best preserved from the Han Dynasty. So far, nearly 6,000 bamboo slips have been unearthed from that tomb. The most eye-catching highlight of this exhibition is the first public display of some bamboo slips recording contents of the Analects of Confucius, or Lun Yu in Chinese. Lun Yu is a collection of teachings and ideas from the ancient Chinese philosopher. There are also bamboo slips recording the general catalog of the complete Qin and Han Dynasty version of the Book of Poetry. The Bund has long been the face of Shanghai's history and glamour, but these days it's also becoming a hot spot for contemporary art. And right now, two very different but equally impressive exhibitions are lighting up the waterfront, offering art lovers double joy in one iconic location. Zhang Yue has more.
In 1976, a shipment of Paris from India and Pakistan escaped at Paris Orly Airport. Locals thought invaders. But those birds, they just wanted to be Parisian. They adapted, thrived, became part of city's charm.
That story inspired paragration, a combination of parrot and immigration that symbolizes cross-cultural artists. Free to view on the Bund, Paragration being Cultural Ferryman is the 2026 opening exhibition at Bund 18 Jiushi Art Gallery. Created with Paris A2Z Gallery, it is part of the 20th China-France Culture Spring. French artist Gabriel Davange is known for humorously deconstructing classical art. His works echo Chinese landscape paintings, with airy compositions and meaningful empty space. Other artists also stand out. Emery Chantier mixes industrial metal with natural wood. An Xiaotong layers ink, rice paper, and metal foil for classic Chinese landscapes. While Sapan Danash revisits his early Paris cardboard boxworks, exploring the struggles of settling in a new place.
You know, we choose Shanghai, especially because as you can see when you walk around along the Bruns, you can see through his architecture the influence of the whole of the world, you know. So for me, it's like already a museum.
The artistic journey along the Bund continues. At the brand new Jiushi Art Museum, another thought-provoking show brings global perspectives to Shanghai's waterfront.
Now relocated to number 1 The Bund, this century-old venue hosts Before the Earth Falls Down, bringing together 9 artists from 8 countries. The exhibition uses installations, video, and sketches to explore humanity's fragile bond with nature. Yin Xiuzhen's large-scale work Planting stands out with wild grasses growing from concrete structures.
So right here, these plants, every single one of them was collected from art lovers across the country. So here's the thing. Art isn't just something made for us anymore. It's something we make together.
South Korean artist Han Kyung-woo returns to Shanghai with Plastic Island. His installation of plastic bags shaped like melting icebergs offers sharp commentary on climate change and ocean pollution.
I collect the plastic bags and I 3D scanned bags, made a 3D model of the plastic bag and made it symmetrical from top and the bottom. It looks like an iceberg floating on the ocean, which is also an iconic image of global warming.
Visitors can also join the Green Plant Relay by bringing their own plants to help renew the installation. In the future, the space will also feature a cafe, a souvenir store, and public art education areas.
That was Zheng Yue reporting. The Shanghai International Flower Show is set to kick off on Saturday. The festival will feature 2 main venues and 10 satellite venues, along with expansive floral displays across commercial districts in the city. Organizers say they've invited a number of renowned designers from abroad, as well as young local designers to create original works. We're at 57 past the hour. Beijing, overcast and down to 14 Wednesday evening, a light rainfall, and 19 for Thursday. Shanghai will be overcast and down to 15, then a light rainfall and 20. Chongqing, overcast tonight and tomorrow, a low of 18, a high of 28. Nanchang will see thunder showers overnight and tomorrow, a low of 18 and a high of 21. Last is getting overcast skies and +2 this evening, that's followed by clouds and 18 degrees. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad's overcast and down to 18 Thursday, a light rainfall and 32 degrees Celsius. And that's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour. Making news today, the top leaders of China and Vietnam have met in Beijing to strengthen trade, development, and cooperation, and covering a wide range of bilateral and international issues. Israel and Lebanon have laid out their different expectations for reaching a ceasefire during talks in Washington. On behalf of the staff, Shane Bigham in the Chinese capital. Hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
Find the Beijing Hour at precisely 6 p.m. Beijing time. We meet you on podcast and on air every weekday. The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
He can't live without the Yellow River in his eyes.
The Yellow River is so noble and elegant.
Both my grandpa and dad made a living from the river.
Would you like to move away from the Yellow River?
I don't think I will. I love it so much.
The Yellow River, the second longest river in China, is regarded as a shaping force in the history, economy and culture of northern China. Today, about 100 million people live within its water basin, making up nearly 9% of the country's population. How is climate change felt at its headwaters, and what are the locals doing to cope with it? What are the descendants of the boatmen doing? What has kept some people from leaving their home village by the river, and what has drawn others back? Could the fading fishing community revive in the time of digital transformation? From 2021 to 2024, our reporters visited the upper, middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, talked to the herders, farmers, boatmen, fishermen and eco-activists who share a close bond with the river, and present their stories in pictures, podcasts and videos, all in our 12-part series, The Yellow River Mosaic, available only on CGTN Radio